agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Karen,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
Dwayne,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Jennifer.
Yes. Looking at the consent agenda, we have minutes from April 8th, April 15th, September 16th, and September 19th on there. Were there any corrections when we looked at them? Bill list, Karen did the bills. Karen, was there anything?
There were just a couple of questions that I had, but Gary answered them. Just some of the abbreviations, I wasn't quite sure, what they stood for. But, yeah, all the questions were answered that way, so.
Anybody else had questions when we looked at the bills? Resignations.
There's three, and in the personnel handout, but we have a resignation for John Ruggeman. He wishes to resign his bus driving contract. He had a regular route and then also the mail shuttle during the day. And then we have Cassidy Smith, who wishes to resign her preschool teacher associate position effective December 20th of 2019. She's planning to return to work, or to college to work on her early childhood education degree. And she's worked for us for 1 year. And then we have Kim Ruger, as she wishes to resign her TA position, teacher associate position at the Carroll Middle School effective October 25th, or sooner if a replacement can be found.
Casey, I have a question real quick, Casey. For Cassidy, and going back for early childhood, is there any way that we keep in touch with these individuals that we could possibly recruit them in the future? Or is this just something that they say, I'm going to school, and we don't ever contact them again?
Well, I know we have at least one teacher right now that worked as a TA for us, right, Sue?
There's no set process or whatever that
They can apply just like, but we would recognize their name,
Oh,
you know, if they
yeah.
applied, so they would recognize their
I'm just
name.
curious, as far as if there was any kind of process that they would.
And if she's demonstrated the qualifications we'd like, I mean, of course, it seems like that might work, so you never know.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we have field trip. Looks like we have one. Is that right?
Yes, Sonia Walsh, who directs our musicals and plays, she's requesting to take 7 students to Cedar Falls in a school van on November 8th, and they would attend the International Thespian Society Festival and then return on November 9th.
And do we have money in the budget for that? Does that come out of the activities fund?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to make it work.
With that, yeah. I can't remember, are they paying for the tickets or the
I don't
hotel maybe? But yeah, and of course they're having a musical coming up, so I don't know how they'll do with that as far as ticket sales and things, but if not, then they'll, we'll have to, Booster Club, we're looking to fundraise or that kind of thing.
Are they supposed to provide a budget what the expected expenses are for these trips?
Yep.
So maybe just kind of send that back there saying we approved it, but in the future we need to have
Yeah.
budget items considered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So don't they usually submit the trip and then how it's going to be funded?
Well,
To the board?
the fundraisers have been a topic of conversation here. What's been happening is, like Randy gets, for field trips, Randy got the request, and so Randy talked to me about it. I never saw a form that had the budget, and I didn't ask for one, but.
And most of those expenses will come through as a requisition, so then I'll see them
Right.
and Randy will see them and actually.
I will not see those,
Okay.
not for activities.
Yeah, I get it. So we get, so they have to do a requisition for for any purchases that come from that, yeah.
So,
But we need to probably do a little cleanup work with some of those kind of things and fundraisers. I start talking about fundraisers, but where we're just kind of getting verbal, I'd like to do a fundraiser for this or that, and we need to get back to filling out the paperwork and going through the right process, so.
questions?
What were the dates again on that?
November 8th, and then they would return on the 9th, so they'd stay overnight on November 8th.
Do you know if they've gone to the Booster Club to ask for any kind of funding?
I don't,
Because
not sure.
there would be another meeting before their trip, they could
Yeah.
actually ask for some,
yeah.
it might be a, you know, and then Booster Club is very good about sponsoring it.
Don't they, doesn't each department get a budget?
Yeah.
So does this fit into their budget?
I just finished their budget, I'd have to look at that, to see, the problem with, activity fund, like Casey said, we have to estimate, like, their primary income source will be their musical. And, so we have to estimate what their ticket sales will be, and it really depends on the musical that they're doing. Last year, their revenues were down, I don't even remember what they did for a musical last year, but now I've heard that ticket sales this year are pretty strong. So it kind of depends on, you know, the time of year, what they're doing. It's a little hard to budget, but I look at a lot of historical information when I put together their budget, so that's kind of how we do it. Also, the thing with drama is they don't have a lot of expenses once they get this musical out of the way. Then we won't see many other expenses for the rest of the year, so. But yeah, we'll definitely take a look at it and see where we're at, because we're really trying to keep an eye on the activity fund this
Right.
year, so.
Can we say that we'll approve it, but if there's not enough revenue from the musical, that she'll have to ask the Booster Club to make up that difference, or come up with a different source of coming to making up that difference?
Or maybe you just need to, maybe it just needs to be, you'd like to make a request to the Booster Club for the cost of hotels or the tickets or whatever.
Okay.
I was just looking, I see 5 students went last year,
Okay.
so, and I think you said 7?
7, yep.
7 students.
Any questions? Could I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Brad?
Yes.
Dwayne?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Now, this is unique this time, we're going into closed session, and then we'll return to open session. Does someone have the language to read for the closed session? Do you have that, Gary?
I didn't
Or could they just read this?
I think you can just read this.
Okay. Can someone read letter A to go into closed
I
session?
move that we move into closed session to meet with the council to discuss matters currently in litigation pursuant to Iowa Code Section 21, Sub 5, 1C.
Second.
Dwayne?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we are out of closed session, we've returned to open session. Now we're looking at approval of the EMC tentative settlement agreement.
I move to accept the recommended settlement from the district's insurance carrier in order to avoid additional costs, expenses, and attorney fees, and conclude the ongoing litigation with Stephanie Wigman.
Second.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Dwayne?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
We know one of the normal questions is gonna be what that settlement is, and we cannot discuss that at this point in time until the case is finalized. Once it's finalized, Gary will have a copy of the paperwork, and you're welcome to it, it's public record, you know, or once we know it's finalized, if anybody has questions about that, at that time, we can discuss what that settlement is.
Thank you. Okay, next we have public forum. I just want to remind everybody that we always have a public forum every meeting, and that you're welcome to come and ask any questions. We're very open, and we'd love for people to come and ask us those questions so we get the correct information out to the public. And it's nice to see some people here, because we usually don't have many people, as Tom knows, right, Tom?
Yep, I was the only one in August.
Is there any questions, comments? Next, we have donations.
Yeah, we have a few to report. The Association for Handicapped Citizens would like to donate $500 to the Carroll Community School District Special Education Department. And then Marty Toole would like to donate 10 medicine balls to the middle school wrestling program. And then we have Stephanie Drake in the 6th grade Carroll Youth Volleyball Program would like to donate 5 volleyballs to the Carroll Middle School Volleyball Program.
Questions? Get a motion?
I'll move that we accept the 3 donations as listed in the agenda.
Second?
Karen,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
Dwayne,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes. Next, we have the school improvement report, the fall 2019 FAST scores.
And also got APs. I do not have math. I'll bring math after I get it figured out. But I have the reading, which was more pertinent to us, and the math is brand new, so we're not quite ready to maybe present that yet. But I have a packet that's got the yellow stripes, and it's got several pages that shows the data, the spring data. I also put out one copy of what is changing in the platform and when healthy indicators. So I gave you that one separate. I'm going to start on the second page and then come back to the first page. Last week I took a group of teachers, 3 teachers, to Ames to be trained, and they're coming out, the Department of Ed is coming out with a new website, Panorama, and it's going to be able to eventually analyze all our data. Attendance by school is very clean looking. They started out with reading, and we're very familiar with the reading, fast reading. And so I just wanted to give you a little bit of a snippet of what you can get from this website with just these 2 healthy indicators. The first one is, the first column here will show the 3 schools, and then it says percent of students taking the FAST benchmark in kindergarten through 6th grade. The goal for the state is 95%. We were at 97%. And then the second indicator that we'll be looking at is the one, the average, the percent of students meeting benchmark on the FAST assessment for the grade level. And we had 75% of our students meeting that benchmark. The goal is always 80. And then by the end of the year, you'll see some of the data that we've already collected. We do have grades that did meet, or a grade, at least one of the grades that met the 80 benchmark, 80% meeting benchmark. And then it breaks it down, and you'll be able to see Fairview, Adams, and middle school. You know, the Fairview building, K through 2, had 78% of those students proficient, and middle school had 77%, and then Adams had 69%. You go on to the next page that you have in your packet, and it breaks down further, and I'm not gonna read all the data to you, but you'll see kindergarten, 1st and 2nd, so that just for the Fairview building, we had 98% participation, and our average, or our percent proficient was 78% of our students meeting the benchmark for their particular grade level. And so the data will break down also, if you look on the left, we'll be able, this was one thing our leadership team wanted to know, was like breaking down into special populations. You know, we can do gender, we can do IEP students, we can do students in gifted and talented, we can do students in Title I, and I haven't got all the whole picture, mainly because I had to do screenshots instead of being able to print. But you can kind of see, you know, where we stand. We're in pretty good shape. And in going to Adams on the next page, you'll see 3rd and 4th grade data. And then on the last page of this chart would be middle school, 5th and 6th grade. And we're required to do K through 6, to fast test those. And then any student in 7th on up should be measured with an assessment if they're not proficient. And that's just the state trying to keep on top of things. We were part of a group, we were a pilot for differentiated accountability, probably 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And this is the groundwork that they've laid. We've contributed to this in our work here in Carroll. The next page, you'll see individual students will be able to look at that. And I marked a couple of them there, 3, 4 students that I thought maybe you might be interested in. The student number 1 on that sheet, and this shows fall, winter, spring last school year, and then our fall data for this year. And our student that's got the very dark green, that's a college pathway. That dark green means that the student is already, they're identifying college pathway, and this happens to be 3rd grade. I've just taken a snapshot or a screenshot of that. The second student, we see that that student experienced some risk in 2nd grade, fall, winter, spring, and then this fall is still experiencing some risk. So yellow is some risk, and that student would be progress monitored. It would have been progress monitored all last year and had an intervention all last school year, interventions, and we monitor that. And then I have a 3rd student there, number 3, and I put little stars by that student. That student was at some risk in fall, winter, spring of last year, but you see that that child is light green, which means that that student's proficient, but maybe not as high of numbers as what our college pathway student. And if you flip to the next page, I'll show you, this is student 3, and we're doing our progress monitor floats from the FastBridge website, and so we can look at that. And this student, it shows how fall, winter, spring last year, he was at risk, slightly at risk, and then this year he came out with the green, which is being proficient. And you can also notice that this would also be a decision maker. We see that there's some kind of flattening out there around 80. In the fall, students are expected to get, for 3rd grade, 87 is proficient, 87 words per minute. And then in the winter, the target is they're already starting to work toward that, and that would be 110. So we make instructional decisions based on the progress monitoring that we have, the interventions we provide. And when you see that a student maybe is flattening out, like if his next piece of data came out and we were still at that flat part, we weren't getting any better, then we would reevaluate, is the student in the right intervention? So turning back just that one page again, and you'll see that we have the student at the bottom there is one that was high risk. He or she wasn't there in the fall to take the assessment within the window, and you see red, and yellow means high risk, and then the student some risk. So even though that student was having difficulty in 2nd grade, by the time the first testing, we've actually seen some improvement. And so just realizing that all of this data provides us is decision-making data. We use it to make instructional decisions on what to do in our core instruction for a whole class in a classroom, and we also use it to with our Tiger Times and small group instruction. So I'm going to have you flip back to the front, and this is a summary of the data, and I did include preschool on here too. But looking at kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, 5th, 6th, you'll see that I've provided last, I think I've got 5 years, 1, 2, 3, 4. This will be the 5th year of data, and you can see where I've used an asterisk to show when we've reached the 80 or above % proficient, and you can see that this year, just ignore the top number there because that's the 80s, but you can see we're in the 70s. We do have 1 grade level in the 60s, but we also have 1st grade at 83% proficient at this time of year. And I would say, our data looks pretty good. I feel pretty good about it. Remember, the bar will go up every time. It doesn't like this is a flat number, just as I indicated for 3rd grade. 87 in the fall, 110 in the winter, and then it just continues. So that line is progressing. And it just also remember that when a student takes a 2nd grade assessment, it's for 2nd graders. So for 2nd grade last year was a certain piece of data from fall, winter, spring. This year, we start all over again, so that's why some of our students tend to drop in the spring testing window. So you can kind of see how we're doing there. I also provided the IGDs. Remember that these students are brand new, 4-year-olds. They don't have, we don't have any control over their learning before they walk in the door. And you can kind of see some of the data has, usually by the time we do that spring testing for preschool, you'll see that they jumped an immense amount because of the direct instruction they received from our teachers and the teacher associates in their classrooms. So we're kind of go, down, up, down, but that's to be expected. So we can see that, last year we ended at 74% proficient for our 4-year-olds, and then this fall we start out at 22%, and that kind of goes along with the story of kind of where we're at. That's just part of the job of teaching preschool. And what I also shared with you is this one little sheet that I thought was important, because eventually we're gonna get to, they provided, our data from the panorama is providing us the first column, available now, healthy indicator 1, healthy indicator 3. But in November, we're going to get the healthy indicator data for number 2, which is number and percent of students not at benchmark who are receiving progress monitoring. So the state does not want to see, if a student is not at benchmark, they want to know that we're monitoring that growth to see if we're providing the right instruction. So every student who is not proficient they should be able to look at and determine, we should be able to look at and determine if they're getting progress monitoring, because it would be a uh-oh if you're not progress monitoring. So that's a real good piece of indication that we have. And then in the winter, we're gonna get 3 more. The percent at above, first one is number 4, number and percent of students above benchmark in the fall who remain at benchmark. So we don't want anybody taking steps backwards. Even though that line is going up, you don't want a green to go to a yellow, just to give you an example. And that's heart-wrenching because we work really hard at this, so we want to make sure we've got the right match for the students. And number 5, the number of students who below benchmark 2 consecutive windows who are receiving intervention. We have no problem because all of our students receive some type of intervention, so we would be okay with that. I think, but we just want to see improvement. That's our goal, is to see that. And then the last one is the one that percent of students below benchmark in the fall who move above benchmark in the spring. That's always our ultimate goal. So learning, improving reading, all of those things go together to make a tight package. And I've just provided you some of the reading data that we have that is tight, it's research-based, state's working really hard on it. And as I said, they'll expand their platform and we'll probably have ISASP on there. We'll have other pieces of data, and it'll just be a collection, and it'll be easy, because it's easy to read and very clean. Any questions that you have about reading at Fairview in middle school, Adams here?
You talk about, Sue, I know with the interventions, and
Yeah.
we've been doing those for years and years since I've been on the board. I know. What do you do for the kid, for that dark green kid that's above?
We extend, I actually taught at Tiger Time today because Taylor Schulte was gone, and she's at the PLC conference, but you extend them with comprehension type skills. It's not so much about reading fast.
Right.
Fast is not the goal anyway, it's reading for meaning, but just providing those opportunities for comprehension, because we believe every child should grow, whether they're a student that's, red or a student that's that dark green. We need to see growth somehow, and comprehension tends to be, we usually have about 3 groups in a grade level that are, pretty good sized groups that are in that top group. And so we want to keep them going and thinking and reading, and maybe some informative text, nonfiction text, that type of thing. A variety of genres would be a good opportunity too. So, good
And
question.
Is this information, like I know with my kids, the NWEA, during conferences, we always go over it with their teacher, whoever you meet with. So is this what
They
the
share.
teachers are sharing too,
They
on top
share.
of, and when do they start NWEA? What grade?
In 3rd grade.
3rd grade, so
Third
then they
grade.
share both of them?
Right,
Okay.
and our parents, that if they're, the students who are not proficient, they sign a contract, they receive a letter from the school, from me, and saying they're not proficient, and then we have the parent, the student, the teacher, and the principal all sign a contract saying, this is what the principal's job is, this is what the teacher's job is, this is what the parent's job is, this is what the student's responsibility is. And so we try to make it a tight package, and that's required by the state. There's a 32-page guidelines that go along with this of what the state requires, so it's, yeah, it's good stuff, and I like it. I think it helps us, it challenges us, and it keeps us motivated and keeps kids growing, so. Any other questions?
Yeah, so have you seen any other, like, state averages on these?
Not yet, they
targets or
will
anything?
have the state out though. We'll be
Okay.
able to see where we compare with the state.
Yeah, I know we've seen that in the past, I just didn't see it.
Yeah, they're-
on here, wondered.
Yeah, and it will be clean, actually, I had to go back and clean up my data from spring and fall last year, because they've got that on there, and I was off maybe 1%. So their data, I trust their data better than my data. Back in the old days, used to have to color code, and now we're getting all this, and it's like,
Yeah.
I feel like I can trust the data really good, but yeah. But we will get the state, and I'll give you, either I'll send it out with Casey when we get it, so you kinda know. I would say we're in pretty good, much in the ballpark or above, you know, in that. Any other questions?
Thanks, Sue.
Yeah, thank you.
Next, we have the personnel report.
Yeah, we got a few recommendations. First, Jeff Cullen is recommending that Brian Benzer, he's recommending him for a contracted bus route. This will be AM and PM, and he work about 3.72 hours a day and receive $18.08 per hour, plus the $1,000 signing bonus. And he has all his required licenses, and he's been subbing for us, so it's kind of a natural progression. Second, Sue Ruck is recommending Kim Neese for a mentor position. And then we have some modifications to contracts. I'm recommending that Jill Dryman's contract is modified to include the $25 per month phone reimbursement beginning November of 2019. Gary is recommending food service employee Janet Ulrich's pay be increased by 15 cents an hour to $10.15 retroactive to the start of the school year. She was paid $9.75 last year, which was 15 cents more per hour than the starting wage of $9.60. And this is in an effort to attract more employees. The starting wage was increased to $10. And initially, her wage was increased by 15 cents to $10.
And Casey, I noticed when I was looking through here, do you all have the old one before it was amended?
Uh-oh.
Because I think we had,
It's the light pink.
yeah, that's the amended one.
Okay.
But, well, let me just talk you through
There's
it.
other ones. You mean.
Yeah, something happened when she did the amended one. If you look on the second page of the light pink, I'll kind of explain this to you. We had a bus driver come in with a question, and I had to go back and do some research, and lo and behold, she was right. If you remember, some of you, back to the 2016-17 school year, we converted all the bus drivers' pay from monthly pay to hourly pay. Well, that was a huge upheaval. It was a lot of work. We're never gonna do that again. But in that whole thing, we came up with a starting pay of $17 an hour. That was the bottom. Now, we had 3 bus drivers that were already here. We have a policy that we always move them up at least a nickel more than the starting wage. That didn't happen. So I went back and I found the 3 drivers, Bruce Aids, Janet Ulrich, and Larry Smith. So we added a nickel to their pay going back to the 17-18 school year and based it on the hours they worked. And so you can see there what that will amount to. For Bruce, it'll be $98.12. For Janice, $62.31, and for Larry, $63.66. So that'll bring them up to where they should have been all along, and nobody caught it, and so we just want to fix that.
And didn't we move it to hour, we moved it to hours for some, I mean, what was the reason?
Well, we were running into some issues. A good example is with the whole Affordable Health Care Act, it's
okay.
based on how many hours you work. We weren't paying them by hours. We didn't know how many hours they were working. Now they punch in, punch out, we know. So, that's one of the reasons we switched to hourly.
Any questions on those modifications or the recommendations? Can I get a motion?
I move to accept the recommendations and contract modifications as stated.
Second.
Brad?
Yes.
Dwayne?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Do you wanna switch to to Jeff Dvorak for the bids? Do you wanna switch it down to there? So, okay, Jeff Dvorak is here to talk us through some bids. Now I need to find out what letter it is. We're on, it's at number 10, the business affairs office report in its, letter C. For, sound system bids for Adams and for just Adams, right?
And the high school auditorium.
Oh, the auditorium's down here on the corner, okay.
So basically I was asked to kind of look into what it would take to upgrade our sound system at the auditorium. And so I spoke with the same company that had just did the gymnasium at the high school, and they presented a proposal, which I think is purple copy in your handouts. Pretty cut and dried. They base bid to replace, install new speakers, new wiring, new amplifiers, microphones. Well, actually, the microphones are already completed. The base bid of that was $27,400. They did also price a couple of options for a digital mixer and for stage monitor speakers. At this time, my recommendation, if you'd like to hear that, would be to probably just go with the base bid and get the main system installed and upgraded. The stage monitors would be a definite advantage for performances, because it basically what the stage monitors allow the performers on stage to kind of hear what they're saying, and if there's any musicals, they can hear themselves singing, as opposed to if they're listening to the house speakers, there can be a delay, so it makes it a little more difficult if they're singing along to a soundtrack or something to that effect. So that would be a definite advantage, but whether or not you wanted to approve that at this time, we could always add those at a later date also. And I don't know if Mary included that in there.
Is that the additional 4,000?
That's the
This-
mixer. We have the mixer and then
Yeah, the digital mixer was an option. I would probably hold off on that right now. That can be added at any time also. The digital mixer basically does make it easier, even more user-friendly for whoever's operating the system. But I would say that would be something we can add down the road if we wanted to add that.
So you're recommending going with that 27,400 for the
That would be my
auditorium?
recommendation, and if you wanted to take any of the options, I would probably recommend the stage monitors. Do you have those?
we don't have that.
We don't have that. That was, I didn't bring that with me either. I thought she had it printed, but I think it was $5,700, if I remember correctly, to add those. But
Actually,
again,
it's $47.65.
was it $47.65?
If it says for the
That's for the
County
mixer.
Heath QD use that kind of amount.
Which one's that?
The Allen EQ, 32 digital mixer, and then the cable label.
Yeah, the digital mixer was less than the stage monitors. They were.
So those are included together then? The 4,700?
That would be for the digital mixer.
Just the mixer only.
That's the mixer only. And the reason I guess I started with the auditorium sound system, what we would do is, we actually have two amplifiers, existing amplifiers. The one, I mean, they're original to the building, so they're 30 years old. But if we do the auditorium, we can actually use, there's two amplifiers. One of them's a lesser expensive brand that they recommend not using, but the other one is a good brand that they would say they could reuse at the auditorium or the gymnasium here at Adams. So we would take the amplifier from the auditorium and use it here along with the new speakers. And I don't think she printed the original quote for that's the revised quote, I believe, but it's the original quote, it's saving us about $550 by using the amplifier from the auditorium.
Yeah, this one's the original,
Might be the original.
74, 75.
Any copies of that? No, I didn't see.
They got that one, the
We have
original
that.
and the revised.
Okay, yeah, I thought she put the original one in there, so that's basically the difference between those two quotes was we would reuse the amplifier from the auditorium.
Same company that did the gym?
Same company that did the gym. When I met with them, they came in and looked at our system, they had to kind of chuckle because just the way it was put together and everything, it works, but it's outdated and there's a lot better technology out there now that would improve the sound system in the auditorium, so.
You just having a problem, Tammy, since you've been there?
We've had our struggles.
Well, the other thing I think we're kind of looking at is, we've done the other two buildings. Fairview's got the new sound system in the gym. We're just kind of trying to get everything done at kind of the same time, so everybody's kind of got a decent system in their building when we do musicals here, or the music programs at Adams, they basically have a PA system where they put the microphone up to the little iPad or whatever and play it through the PA system. Well, this would enable them to actually play it through the sound system, so it would improve musical programs here at Adams too, so we're just kind of looking at getting them all done at one time.
And do we have enough money? Do you
Yeah.
have that budgeted for?
Yeah.
Okay. Questions?
Which one of the mixer of the systems, because there was like an alternate system as well as.
Jeff's suggesting the 27,400 for the
Yes.
auditorium, and then the revised one, because it uses
On
the
this
amplifier from the,
Yeah.
The
from the high school
6745.
Right.
Okay.
for Adams.
Yeah.
So
That
there
was
was
for
like
Adams.
there was 3 links on the agenda, so.
And then we can at any time add to it if we
Yeah, we
find that
can-
it's not working right?
Right.
Or that we want other components of it.
Yeah, the main use would be for the stage monitors, would be for musical productions or theatrical productions, but, I don't know, without kind of talking to people who really use it, we should find out if it's something that they really feel we need before we just
Yeah.
add that in, because we can add it later, so. I'd like to do a little more research
I
on
did
that.
talk to Doug at the football game, and he said that currently they probably would not use that they typically don't use canned music,
Right.
the musical, so.
Right, it'd be more for the theatrical, but I don't even know if they need it for that at this point, so.
Probably not.
I would definitely say we should research that more before we
Cheerleaders or something like that.
approve that.
Questions?
Could you just do a real recap real quickly, what we're moving from where?
Well-
I'm just so confused with where things
The
are going.
amplifier at the high school is still good, so it's gonna be moved to Adams. And then
And
that is reflected on the
The
I need my readers, 66,
6,745?
yeah. And then,
We're also reusing the speakers from the gymnasium from the high school,
Okay.
because those were reasonably new when they did the gymnasium sound system. So
Right.
Adams is kind of getting some used equipment, but it's much
Vast-
better.
A vast upgrade.
a vast
from what's at
upgrade
now.
to what's there now.
And for 6745.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
is everybody okay with those two options?
I move to approve the bids from DB Acoustics for a total of $34,145 to do the sound system at the auditorium at the high school and Adams Gym.
Second.
Dwayne,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Jennifer.
Yes.
Karen.
Yes.
Brad.
Yes.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. Yes, thanks for coming in, Jeff.
Next, we have administrative reports. We have reports from our, first from Casey and then the principals.
Yeah, I just have a few things that I wanted to share. First of all, in the folders that you got tonight, I think there might be, yeah, this greenish, lime green sheet. So what this is just, so October, starting tonight through June, the dates that our board meetings would be. And on the left, you see some of the action items that we know we would have. Obviously, we would have more items than that on a given night, but we know some of the big things that come up through the school year. And then on the right, you see reports. What I'm proposing that we would do is, like tonight, Sue presented some testing data. We might have reports like that, but once a month, you would see like a high school report in November, where the high school, Tammy and maybe some staff, maybe it would just be Tammy, would present about the high school. And then the elementary and middle school would have a written report, which there's links to their written reports on your agenda tonight. And then, you would, of course, have the ability to ask questions at the meeting if you had them about those written reports. So this is just kind of some, and this is tentative, of course, but so it could change, but you can see some of the things, how I've scheduled out the different buildings and their reports, and then some other things like school safety, TLC, assessment data would be reported throughout the year. What this would do is, and this, in my previous experiences as well, principals always wondered, well, what should I present? What do they want to hear? Those kind of things. So rather than trying to come up with those things every month, they would have, every so often, they would have a report where they could get a little more in-depth on something that's a focus or an initiative that they're really working on, and they could spend a little bit more time on that in a given month. And then at the same time, you'd still get some of those other things that you've been getting monthly, they'd just be in the written form, and you would read them and be able to ask questions if they come up. So, any feedback on that, any concerns?
The only thing that I saw was, for the superintendent evaluation, what we had
Yeah.
previously done was more like every other month, probably, just a
Sure.
standard. And then at the end of the year, before that deadline in May, just a revisit of all of them is what we did.
Yeah. Yeah, and that, there's still, obviously, this isn't exact on the
Okay.
left side for sure. It was more just that, I think ultimately, after having been here a year, it'd be a little easier to fill that out.
Yeah.
What kind of our regular routine is. But that way, we know kind of, here's what a year looks like, and we also know that things come up too, but.
I like that idea.
No, that's
Also, I wanted to let you know that, and this has happened in the past, but there will be a regional workshop that the Iowa School Board Association will put on, and it will be held here in Carroll in January, at the high school. It's later in January, I'll get you those dates, of course. But of course, with the change to the calendar as far as where the school board election is held, so ISB is having to make adjustments. on how they're rolling out their new board member training. They'll offer something at the convention in November, which is critical. That's November 20th and 21st. That'll be the first critical thing, and then there'll be an option in January. And we're fortunate that we get to host that here at Carroll again. So, those are the main things in my report.
Sue, did you wanna start, or you want Tammy?
Yeah, let's see. I just kind of summarize what we've done the past month. And our multi-tiered systems of support ties into what you heard from me this evening. We did do the math cap, CBM math cap, and it's a first through fourth grade. So this is our first year of doing it 3 times. We did it last spring. We're just gonna kind of monitor that. And then we focused, actually our goals are, reading, math, science, and then social emotional behavior, mental health. And so you can kind of see there what we're using, some of our assessments for each of those. And then the leadership team met early October. We talked about our assessments. We hadn't quite finished our testing period. Our first fall testing ended on October 4th. So any students who came in up through that point, we assessed. Like October 4th, you're being assessed on reading. And then we have building assistance teams. We're coming up with a new format for Fairview and Adams to each have their own building assistance team, and we're meeting early morning on Wednesdays for Fairview and around 12:30 for Adams. So we talk about the academics as well as the behavior, and teachers need to fill out forms. Then we come back and try to provide some interventions that they can use. And then if we do get this, we're gonna vote on Thursday, or get input Thursday on the TQ money, teacher quality money. And we're gonna offer a 15-hour, PLCs can work together, and I put together a class for science. So they can work the 15 hours developing science units and that type thing. We do have a person from AEA coming in. This will be his third, on November 4th, he'll be his third visit to Carroll, talking about, he's a science person, laying some groundwork so they can write their own. And Karen Monaco, who used to work out of middle school, is now working on a recycling program with the, what do you call it?
Redemption.
Yeah, redemption, the whole thing. And so she's gonna present to each of the grade levels, kindergarten through 3rd. We've been doing bus drills. We've also done tornado drill. We're working on drills, working our way. We did tornado drill at Fairview this morning, tornado drill here this afternoon. We do a lot of practice. Parent-teacher conferences, of course, were last week. And then talking about the workshop that we went to learn about the panorama. And then I have 7 new teachers from Fairview and Adams attending the PLC conference, along with Crystal Bass, the assistant elementary principal. And that's kind of, to try to summarize it on one page is difficult, but that's where we are. Any questions?
How are the new walkie-talkies working?
You know what, if I can remember to carry the darn thing. I did use it twice today, so I'm, for a reason. When we did our drills, we had them, and then our parent pickup, we were missing. It was raining, of course, and a couple of our kids got mixed up, so we could call back to the office and find out where they were. So it does work. I mean, it really does work, if you remember to take it with you.
They were great.
And Jerry's has the middle school report on there, and if you have any questions after you look at it, or if you haven't had a chance to look at it yet, let Casey know, and you can follow it.
We could phone him, put him on
Yeah.
speaker. Okay, so do you want me to go through mine, or just go ahead, or?
Sure.
Okay, all right, so if you take a look at the format, you can tell me if you don't like this, or if this is what would be pleasing for you. If you can remember the last time I presented, I focused on the 4 areas of focus for Carroll High School. So those first 2 boxes are things that I've already presented to you in regard to the connection between those 4 areas and the district goals. And if you go to the second page, I will just go over and highlight what we've done since the last time I reported in regard to these 4 different areas of focus. So the first one is the parental involvement, and as Sue mentioned, we had parent-teacher conferences last week. Always a challenge to get high attendance at the high school level. It's been something we've been working on, and we're continuing to try to get creative with different ways that we can encourage parents to come to the high school and have face-to-face conversations. With the ease of checking grades online, oftentimes that precludes someone from feeling as if they need to come into a conference. The other thing that we could be making difficult for ourselves is we are really making a concerted effort for homeschool communications. So we're doing that continually and often. So it might be a case where a parent has a conference at another school and they're just prioritizing in regard to, you know, where they feel they need to be. One of the things we did do, and if you take a look under C, is we've had a partnership with AmeriCorps through DMAC, and AmeriCorps sent a representative out to the high school on both nights to help parents complete the FAFSA form. We get continual feedback from the state on what percentage of students have that completed, and so any help that we can give our counselors in that regard is nice. There were meetings set up with her, so we know that she did get some of those finished. We were hoping to get a good turnout on an engagement survey that we created. Since conference enrollment was down, it didn't turn out the way we'd like to, so I am going to send that out in an alternative way and hope that we can get some more feedback, because it matters to us, the perception that parents have about our high school. So once I get that back, I will report out on that. If you take a look at the second area of focus, which is that social emotional trauma informed, on Friday, which is the end of the quarter already, if anybody can believe that, we will be completing our student connectedness survey, and that survey simply allows students to identify what adults at the school that they feel a connection with. Research shows that simply one makes a huge difference in student achievement. So we've done that once before and we were pleasantly surprised. I'm hoping that this one gives us good data as well. Let's see. There's a couple other things under that. If you have questions, let me know. I'll just keep moving here. Student engagement. We finished all of our NWEA testing at the high school. We do content-specific testing as opposed to all math students taking the same math test. The teachers are finding out that the reports that they can get are getting better and better and better. And so we're pretty excited about the teachers now taking a look at those reports, and also the individual student reports, especially in science, because science is now connected to the NGSS, which it never has been before. So we're pretty excited about that. Hoping that we get our ISASP data back tomorrow. We noticed, what do you think about that, Sue? You think that's gonna happen?
I think it's closer to November 4th.
Seriously?
That's the way
Okay.
it looked like embargoed, didn't it?
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, you haven't?
I think it
Okay.
might be closer to.
Well, I'm still going for tomorrow.
Okay. You sit there and wait patiently.
So, we'll take a look at that. Sue talked about the staff members going to the PLC conference. We have 3.5 there. I say half because it's a halftime middle school, halftime high school person that's there. The other thing that under student engagement is the IPI training. And what IPI stands for is Instructional Practices Inventory. All of the instructional coaches have been trained on that. And what that training is, I can go into a classroom using that rubric, and I can score students to indicate their level of engagement. It's a 6-point scale. A 6 or a 5 is a high level of rigorous, higher order thinking, collaboration, oral collaboration with one another, where you can actually hear and assess that student engagement is high, all the way down to a 1, which would be very low level of student engagement. that being one of our goals, tomorrow we will send 5 staff members to DCG to be trained in that, and with the intent of hoping to get multiple groups of people trained, so that not only can they go in and score, but they are also aware of what student engagement looks like. Climate and culture, another very, very important category. I think anybody that's been to volleyball games or football games knows that not only has the amount of participation increased, but the quality of cheering and student participation at our activities. We're very proud of that, and the kids are doing a really, really nice job. We mentioned before about our play tickets. We have one show that's near sold out already, and the other ones are not far behind. So that's pretty exciting for the kids that are in drama. I have other things, but I just don't know if you want to be here all night. So
We know it's hard for you to narrow things down.
it
but-
just is. I mean, there's just so many things going on. So, but most of the things, I try to figure out what you may or may not have seen on social media or other forms of communication. There's a lot of things going on, but
Any updates on Tiger Vision and New Control Center?
awesome. You just need to come out and take a look at it. The level of intense training that those students received and the equipment that's in there will blow your mind. It's pretty remarkable. I don't know if any of you have seen the live streams of especially volleyball games, but the cameras that can zoom in on faces and then pan over to the student section, all while being controlled from a room that's disconnected to the gymnasium. So the other thing is we're really excited about is starting to utilize that video board for physical education class, and projecting either workouts up there or music to get kids moving, different things like that. So we're getting there slowly but surely. There's only so much time in the day, but
What an
it's-
opportunity for them too. I know
it's-
that, like, my son is one of the interns, and
Right.
we were watching an NFL game yesterday, and they showed the control room.
Right.
And he's like, oh, we only have about 10 of those. He was telling me about what kind of buttons they were and how it
Mhm.
switched between the different cameras and how you do it. And I'm thinking, wow, like, this is real hands-on
Mhm.
experience that they have that I wouldn't know what to put. I would mess everything up. But he was telling me just by that quick view of what each button was and what it was for and how they sync it. They do
Mhm.
an outstanding job on
It's
on it.
the skills that the students, and I talked to the Director of Career and Technical Education from the Department of Education and asked her if there were any ways that we can recognize these students for their skill levels. When you've got kids announcing play-by-play games and they sound like professionals,
Yes.
and the videography that's happening and just the critical thinking that's going into developing a program. And she said, unfortunately, no, but that they are working on finding some ways to identify excellence in those career tech ed programs. There's more to it than just, running a camera. It's very complicated
Well,
and
we
complex.
saw that when 2 of our kids got scholarships last year.
Right.
Because of what they did in Tiger Vision.
Mhm. Mhm.
Are they both in Iowa?
One's at
Iowa
Iowa and
State.
one's at Iowa State.
Are they full ride?
Pretty darn close. And then we also have students that, in the infancy of Tiger Vision, have gone places with scholarships, so the Schoenfeld girl and a couple other kids too, so.
And I think one of the most fun things for me to see is like, Drew will be working on a hype video, and he's texting on his phone. He's texting former Tiger Vision kids
Employees.
to get their suggestions and help on
Mhm.
things. How do I transition this way? And those kids are willing.
Mhm.
they'll call or they'll text back and say, do this and that. So, I mean, there's some great connections going on from former Tiger Vision kids and helping the current ones.
All of the alumni that have come back, are like, why didn't we have this when I was here? Well, it probably didn't exist when we were here, but.
Tim, I have one question for you.
Uh-huh.
I want to digress just for a second back to the parental involvement.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question concerning how you contacted the parents about the FAFSA and what did you tell them? Did you make sure they brought the right documents and things?
Mhm.
Because that's just such a nightmare to fill out,
Mhm.
to have help with that process.
Right, that's
Do
a
they know
great,
that?
yes, that's a great question. There were several different ways that we contacted parents. One was through Tiger Vision. Mr. McCartan has a email thread, you probably remember this, for all senior students. And all of that was sent out with an actual list of all of the documentation that they needed to bring. And then they would call and set up an appointment, and at that time, it was also reiterated what documentation they needed to bring in. Because that's the most difficult part, is making sure you have all of those things together, so. Mm-hmm. It's a good question, I wish I would have had that one. I had to, it's much easier now,
Yeah.
it's much easier.
The hours that it takes to fill that out, to have help and
Right.
things, it just terrific.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's almost feel, I want to give up sometimes trying to do all the things.
Right.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next, we have our certified enrollment report.
Yeah, which B and C will kind of go together, but, so we finished, our count day was October 1st, and that's the day that schools across the state count the kids in their building. And then from there, we create a file in our student information management system. For us, that's Infinite Campus. And by the 15th of October, that has to be uploaded to the state. The state, the Department of Ed has made some changes on the back end, and so it won't be official. Everybody was supposed to just hit the certify button on the 15th, and so now there'll be a period of time where there's some errors that are gonna be cleaned up. So officially, we don't have our enrollment yet, but it does look like we're down 17 kids this year on our certified enrollment. And certified enrollment is the number that we get our funding for. So that's the resident kids in the district, basically, those that attend and those that are open enrolled out. And in your packet, this is the folder today. This document right here gives you a little history from 2012 to the 1920 school year what our enrollment has been. And this just has certified enrollment and then open enrolled in and open enrolled out back to 2012-13. And you know, in 12-13, our certified enrollment was 1690. This year it's 1701. One interesting thing is on the open enrollment in and out, we have this year 91 in and 95 out. But I want to point out that 90, that 95, actually, there are 5 of those kids that are tuitioned out. Okay, so that's a tuitioned out student is a student that we didn't have a program to serve them. It wasn't a situation where the parent made the decision to send them to another school district. So actual open enrollment would have been 90 out. So, but later this month or early next month, it'll be official. It'll be official. We're pretty confident that we're error-free at this point. So, and if we weren't, it would be 1 or 2 plus or minus 1 or 2 is all it would be. So.
Next, we have a memo of understanding with the New Hope Village.
Okay, yeah, this is something that we've done in the past, and we contacted New Hope, and yeah, they'd like us to approve it again. And you can see really what this is, it's an agreement between us and New Hope Village that, in short, we would be a partner with them, and if they have to evacuate or they have an emergency situation, we would provide some services to help them evacuate. And it says that we will allow them to use basically our facilities in an emergency situation where they gotta get their folks out of their facility.
Questions? Can we get a motion?
I'll move to approve the memorandum of understanding between New Hope Village and Carroll Community School District.
Second.
John?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Dwayne?
Yes.
Next, we have a sharing agreement with Arviva for speech.
I was contacted by the superintendent at Arweva, and they're the person that coached or sponsored the speech team. So this is we're talking about the co-curricular activity of speech, resigned, and so they've been trying to find a person to lead that program, and they had not been successful. So we contacted the athletic association to find out what we needed to do, and both districts need to approve a sharing agreement. Last week, or maybe it's previously this month, earlier this month, Arweva approved it. And so we're looking at probably 6 kids, maybe 5, 6 kids, could be more, that would come over and participate with us for extracurricular speech. We talked to our coach, and we're okay with it, and so we would recommend that we approve this sharing agreement.
Questions?
Sounds good.
So the kids just drive over themselves, or do they bus?
I believe so, but if there's transportation, or we would have to provide that.
Move we accept the sharing agreement with Arweva for the speech program.
Second.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Dwayne?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Next, we're gonna talk about the superintendent evaluation. I think it was 4 years ago now, I think it was the second year, we did it with Rob 2 years, I believe. We switched to a new evaluation that, we do about every other month, we meet on a standard and we have discussions, so that at the end of the year, by law, we have to have the evaluation done by the end of May. But, by the time we got to the end of May, there was no regrouping or chance to go back and revisit anything, so we felt we had a great dialogue in those meetings of suggestions, things to try, things that were working, not working, kind of regrouping, and it just became very meaningful. It wasn't just a copy and paste evaluation anymore. It became a meaningful tool. And we had Harry from the Iowa School Board Association come down and do a workshop with the board, and we developed the evaluation to fit our needs of our district. So now that we have Casey, we're kind of remapping of, the evaluation has some, I really need to get some readers. It says like the superintendent will, and then there's key indicators of the progress that we look for when rating them. We rate it 1 to 4. 1 means fails to meet, and 4 means exceeds. And then what we do as a group is, when we do the actual evaluation, we take all our comments, we put it in here as a board, because we govern as a board. We take all our numbers, and we find an average, and that's the average number that he receives for that standard. So we're just setting up that our first meeting will actually be today. We'll do the first standard together. But before we do that, we need to look at the key indicators, because this was set up for Rob when we did it, and see if we want to change anything. It's been 4 years now, 3 years now, so see if we want to change anything before we go in to close session later on in the meeting and actually have the evaluation on the standard one. And then come May, what we do is we regroup, we look at all the standards again, kind of do a final summary, and that's the final evaluation of it. Is there any questions on how it works? So the first standard that we have, it says, superintendent will highlight the district's key initiatives, accomplishments, and value in the community, communicate and connect the district's professional development plan and implementation to the district's goals and priorities. And we have key indicators being professional development plans that are presented yearly to the board, board newsletters, superintendent reports, principal department reports, building action plans, and student achievement data as key indicators. Is that pretty standard, Casey?
Yeah, I don't have any concerns with anything on that.
Anything we're missing?
No, not that I can think of at this point. I mean, I think that's a pretty good list there.
And we can always modify as we move through it too. And then standard 2, and this is kind of similar. The superintendent will provide effective leadership for strong teaching, which will ensure that every child in every classroom has access to high quality teaching. Challenge administrators, teachers, and self to strive for continuous improvement, provide resources for staff to grow, to improve teaching and learning. And in key indicators, we have the Iowa assessment, which is not called that anymore, right? What's the abbreviations of it?
It's
ISASP.
ISI?
ISASP, ISASP.
Why can't they do anything easy?
Because then you wouldn't have a question on it.
Fast data, MAP, which is, measures academic progress with the NWEA, is that still, okay? District graduation rates, district dropout rates, data from district developed formative assessments, and communication, teacher, staff achievement and successes, professional development plans.
So isn't last year, those are taken twice? They're both standard 1 and 2, or you just use this for both?
I think because they were very similar, so we kept them in both.
I think they could apply to both. That's not uncommon even for teachers, that an artifact might be multiple standards, but.
And when we do that standard, if I remember correctly, didn't we always kind of put 1 and 2 together when we did it because it was very similar? Anything, Casey, that you see that?
So it's heavy on like student achievement, which makes sense. When standard 2 is about culture of learning, so those would be the things you use for indicators.
And standard 3. The superintendent will communicate with the board regularly about the financial health of the district, provide leadership for current and upcoming facility improvements, forecast financial needs and planning to address those anticipated financial needs, lead the implementation of district efforts to recruit, select, develop, and retain staff to provide quality instruction. Key indicators, we have prepare various budget reports throughout the year, communicate the district's financial picture, report on the spending authority, solvency rate or ratio, work with lobby and legislator for appropriate funding for schools.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good list on the management side. I don't have any concerns there with anything in that.
standard 4, the superintendent will collaborate with the community on an ongoing basis regularly regarding facility improvements, provide leadership for administrators and teacher leaders to collaborate with parents and families around what and how staff are teaching students. Key indicators of progress include implement at least 2 new ideas to promote student staff are doing in order to build positive public relations, radio interviews, guest columns on the Times Herald by the superintendent, principals, and staff, copies of handwritten notes to staff, promote CCSD through advertisement in newspaper like registration, open enrollment.
The only one that I feel like that first one on there is pretty specific to a former superintendent with the 2 new ideas. I mean, I could see it maybe for me next year or something, maybe that's something, but I don't even know what
There's not new
the previous idea.
right.
Yeah, so.
The only thing I would add too, potentially, just to have a strong social media presence.
Since it's changing.
Yeah.
What if we change the first one just to promote what students and staff
Yeah.
are doing and take
Yeah.
out at least the
Yeah.
new? Okay. And then John, you were saying more social media presence
Just
for the district?
Yeah.
Not necessarily always the Daily Times Herald, too. On the bottom where it says promote CCSD through advertisements in newspaper, you could add also social media, just add that on. It might
Yeah.
be better to add it right there because it says it's about registration at the moment. That'd be a great place that you could advertise it on social media tools too.
And what if you just, other forms besides the newspaper or media?
Media
Can we
outlets.
just put through media
Through
outlets?
media outlets, I think that's a good idea.
Is everybody okay with that? Handwritten notes to staff, that was really, because that's something that Rob liked to do, but just because Rob liked to do it doesn't mean that, maybe you have a different management style. Do you want to take that off and you do something more with what your style is?
And to me, having those on there doesn't mean that somebody has to have copies of that. Those
Right.
are ideas of.
Ideas, yeah. I mean, I might not always do it handwritten, I do handwritten notes at times. So it could just be copies of communication to staff.
Is that okay then?
Yeah.
Is everybody okay with that? And standard 5 is the easy standard. The superintendent will act with integrity, honesty, and fairness. And we either say he's meeting it or he's not. So it's a yes or no, and we put comments in there. So there's not really anything to change on that one. And standard 6, the superintendent will collaborate with other organizations in the community to improve educational experiences for the students, connect and build relationships with the broader community outside of the school day. And the standard itself is an educational leader promotes the success of all students by understanding the profile of the community and responding to and influencing the larger political, social, economic, legal, and cultural context. And we had a yes or no for that too. Did you want to add any indicators on that one or just
I think
discussion?
I think that one's similar to 5.
Okay. So then what we'll do next is, in closed session, we actually do the evaluation for the standard 1 and use those key indicators. That's how he'll be measured as we move forward. Questions? Well, that was easy. Next one. Do we need a motion, Gary? Should I do a motion to change the evaluation? It does not matter because it's all confidential.
As far as the timelines,
No, just the content.
Just the content?
Oh, the content? What do you think, Casey? I don't know if you need a motion.
I don't think you do.
Okay. Okay, and then next we have some board policies. Did you wanna do that, Casey?
Or G's, the schedule.
Oh, we're, a review schedule, yes.
Yeah, real quick, in the orange sheet here, we changed our board policy on, it says that we'll review our board policies, it did say every 3 years, now it says every 5 years, so we updated our schedule for the next 5 years to review policies, just so you can see that we have a plan of which sections we'll review in what school year, so.
Questions on that? Next, we have our first reading of board policy 402, limitations of employment preference.
Yeah, that's a new policy, and it is, that one came from, it's limitations to employee references, employment references. And you can see it's a mandatory policy, and the language stated in this policy reflects the standards established for schools receiving funding under the Every Student Succeeds Act. And earlier policy revision, we revised one of our policies, I think it's on board ethics, so it would align with this policy. And so basically the kind of things that we would share on an employment reference check, that scope's kind of been narrowed a little bit. So you can see what that says there.
And that, was that in suggestions from the Iowa School Board
Yep.
Association?
Yep.
Any questions on that? And we have second readings from 425, use of a stink by district employees, and 433, 433R1, voluntary retirement regulations.
Yeah, 424, second reading, it's basically, we added a paragraph about aiding and abetting is prohibited. So if an individual is an employee, contractor, or agent of the district, they shall not assist another employee, contractor, or agent in obtaining a new job, apart from routine transmission of administrative and personnel files. You can see, it's basically, it goes through that whole aiding and abetting. It could occur. So the old days of if you did something wrong, just move down the road, we can't do, you don't do that anymore. And so again, another recommended policy change from the School Board Association. And then 4 regulations go with that too. And then 433 is on voluntary retirement. We talked about this. This has been in our policy book, based on recommendation from our school attorney. We're recommending that we take this out of our board policy, so it wouldn't reside there any longer. A lot of schools have done this already. A couple things, by being in policy, it's more permanent. And the other thing is that to make changes to a policy is, we have to have 2 readings. And so that's another reason why it makes it a little simpler if it lives outside of policy.
And where, did he say where he wanted it, the attorney?
What we talked about is we just have a plan, so it's not in a handbook and it's not in policy, it's just a plan, it's a document that each year the board would take action on. Meaning they would say yes, no, make any changes that you wanted to, because in a given year, things can change where you may want to change the benefit that you're offering to make it more attractive, or, you may say, for the next 2 years, we don't want to offer it.
questions on this?
Is there ever any?
Tom, you're aware of that being deleted and understand that from the union perspective, aren't you?
Is that gonna be similar to a handbook then? It's just not, there's nothing binding with it? I mean, that's kind of what I'm going with, is just under, you know, like we talked last year, it's under this communication and an idea of trust. You know, but it just allows you guys to make the change within the year. If you want to, you're like, okay, we wanna up instead of 50%, or, you know, we wanna try and get a couple more people on there, or you can,
And it does, like you said, give us.
even if it was policy, it didn't need to be offered.
Yeah,
So,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know what, I really don't see personally, I don't see much change in it, you know. I'm planning on being around
Just
for a
in
little
what
while.
form it resides. as opposed to
Yeah,
being
in the form that it
policy.
resides in, I'll be around for a while
And
yet,
the
so.
dates, regardless, when it was in the policy, we'd have to adjust it because the dates were inactive. I mean, because it was past dates all the time.
Yep.
Well, Casey already has it planned to come on November's board meeting, then that would be the month that we would look at it moving forward every November to see if it was gonna be offered or not.
We're meeting before that, right? I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that makes sense.
Can I get a motion to approve the first reading of 402 and the second reading then of 424 and 433R1 that deletes the policy?
I move to approve the first reading of policy 402, the second reading for policy 424, 424R1, and to delete 433 and 433R1.
Karen,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
Dwayne,
Yes.
John, Jennifer?
Yes. Now we're gonna talk about the early retirement, the plan, since it's deleted from policy.
Yeah, and it's purple in your folder that you got at the table tonight. So I think what you'll find, especially right now, not a lot of changes, especially to the specifics that were in the policy before. What differences exist in this document, I feel like, are probably more about some procedures for how it's been done. There's an application, there's several documents here, but then how we communicate, if a plan's being offered, you're required to, of course, communicate that with people who are eligible. This talks about we would do that, by email, and then we would hold a meeting as well for anybody that qualifies, where they would come and be able to ask questions. We would go through some specifics to make sure that everybody's aware that you don't have to do this. How the benefit would work. But a couple things I would point out right away. First of all, the word voluntary would need to be added prior to next month, where it says voluntary early retirement incentive plan. And so we would make that change before next month. If you go to page 2, the second page, it says, as far as the benefit, well, it says that the employees have 45 days to consider this, so January would be the month that applications would have to be in and the board would take action. But the benefit, it says, would be a lump sum cash payment of 50% of the employee's current year's salary, up to a maximum amount of $30,000. We made no later than July 31st in the employee's name to a 403B employer-sponsored defined contribution plan as outlined in the summary plan document. At the option of the board, the payment could be made over a period of time not to exceed 5 years. The qualifications are the same still in this, 55. Or, that's on page 1, I skipped that. at least 15 years of full-time service, continuous years contracted service with the Carroll Community School District, or a total of 30 years of full-time contracted service if they are at least 55 years of age. Then you wouldn't be eligible if you've received a layoff notice or termination, or subject to termination pursuant Iowa Code Section 279.15.
Does it talk about, Casey, about, like, for instance, if we say we're gonna take 6,
Yeah.
how it's determined if they all come in at the same time?
So it is not, that language isn't in this right now, but I did talk with our attorney about that, and here are a couple examples of languages that he's used in prior situations. It says here, the board will limit the number of applications approved to the first blank applicant submitted by eligible, you would establish the number.
Okay.
And then applications will be considered based upon the date and time applications are received by the district's administration office and will be acted upon in the order in which they were received. The board has the sole discretion, reserves the right to approve more than the first, how many ever you set, submitted by eligible employees. Or the board will limit the number of applications approved to a certain number. The applications chosen to be approved will be the applications submitted by the how many ever most senior employees after the application period has ended. The board of directors is, in its sole discretion, reserves the right to approve more than that number.
Tom, I've had several teachers talk to me about that, and that they didn't like because we drew names last time, I guess. That's what was in policies, is drawing the names. They were requesting us to change it to seniority. If they're all, like, for instance, if we said 6, we were only taking 6, and they're all in line at the same time at the district office,
It
That's-
goes based on your service to the district,
to the district.
seems to be understandable. I don't have as many years in the district, but yeah, it seems understandable. I could understand that.
But we also want the flexibility to look at, our finances and see if we limit it to 6, but we can look at financially, and Gary can say, oh, you can, if we had 8 apply,
Yeah.
we're okay with doing 8. We want that flexibility to be able to raise that 2 to 8.
Well, and I thought that that's what taking it out of policy would kind of do without having to do the readings, I think. It would
Right.
allow you
Yes.
to do that as you see fit.
Right.
Yep. No, that sounds like a more, if somebody turns one in 3 minutes before somebody else, or they're all in the front door of the office going, they're just, yeah.
It will put Mary in a very awkward situation.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Is it possible, can we draft something up and then run it by, the unions with the seniority stuff?
Just to get their comment on it?
Yeah, to see.
You can, yeah.
Would you like that, Tom?
That would probably be a nice thing. I could put it out to
Okay.
at least to the membership, and let them know what's being talked. I know I've only been contacted by one teacher who's wondering, is it gonna be offered? Yeah, so, yeah, I could get it out there probably, if he float me, or I could just send it out as what you're suggesting. I could just type it up myself and send it out to him.
Yeah,
If
I
that
can
works
share-
out.
I can share with
Okay. All right.
Now, in the past, it's been, when it was in policy, it was for all employees.
Right.
And so, if you do the seniority, we need to think through that a little bit, because you have two, you've got licensed and you've got non-licensed staff, and you've got
Yeah.
two bargaining units.
That's true.
So,
Yeah, I'll contact the CEA members.
Right.
and again, there's where, again, when we talk about flexibility, there could be a time where you wanna offer it, you could wanna offer it to one group and not the other. I mean, the board, you would have the ability to do that if you you wanted to. I mean, you could have a policy too, I suppose, but, and you could do two different plans. You could do one plan for licensed and one plan for non-licensed if you ever wanted to do that.
Thought?
Sounds good.
I'd like to hear their feedback from those staff.
Can we do that, and then we can get maybe, I don't know who is the CESA.
I don't know, I could probably find out from Cindy, and I could give her a text, I could text her and maybe find out, and then I could get, and then let you guys know, and then you guys can contact that individual.
Does that sound okay? And with the volunteer retirement, for the people that don't know, what we use it for is actually we use it to take down our general fund. If they retire early, we can pay them out of the management fund. Schools are funding is very tricky, right, Gary? There's
Yeah.
3 different main funds. Management fund that can only be used for, like insurances, what else? Unemployment, those type things. Well, we're able to take early retirement money out of the management fund, which reduces our general fund, which is about 82 to 85% is what is the pay of all the employees, that percentage. Reduces it because we're able to get
Typically
teachers hired, yeah.
Yeah, not always.
They've been there, yeah, they usually have been here a long time and are higher on the pay scale, but we also have to be careful because we don't wanna lose those quality expertise too, so we have to be careful with, that's what the board struggles with more than anything is the loss of the experienced master teachers or master staff.
Well, one other thing too with that, Jen, is that we ran into in the past with the funding being so low, like with the one year we had 0% funding, and yet contractually you ended up having to do some pay raises. So now all of a sudden, okay, well, now we got a shortfall. You're gonna pay another extra, hundreds of thousands of dollars out of the general fund. That many times facilitated an early retirement to come in, so you could reduce some cost by obviously hiring in some staff at a little cheaper price. So,
And we did, when actually Dwayne and I first came on the board, our first time running,
yeah,
we were gonna have to lay off
We had
teachers.
layoffs.
So we were, what, 500,000 that we had to come up with?
I think it
Was
was
it
more
Gary?
than that. I think it was more than that.
And we saved more than 300,000 with the early retirement by offering the early retirement at that time, so,
And there still were cuts.
yeah, and there still
There
was
had
cuts.
some cuts, yeah.
I think that, and I think I've said it to each of you, probably individually, but the concern going forward is, as it becomes more and more difficult to find quality teachers and staff to fill positions, I see schools trying to think about ways to keep people to stay longer, especially if you've got the budget to be able to do that. So it's gonna be interesting next few years. I just think it's always important for staff to keep that in mind, because it does become something that when people are here for a long time, it's kinda like, well, I know that that's gonna be there, and, we just gotta be careful with that.
Okay. So then we'll get that information out and have another
Yeah, so
discussion next time.
I'll get that language to Tom so he can talk to some folks about it, and our other folks, and then next month then the plan would be to bring back this document with a couple little some changes for you to consider to take action on.
Okay. And Gary, will you have money then, we have like what we have in the management, and we have that figured out so you can see how many people we can.
Yep.
Okay, next we have the School Improvement Committee recommendation.
Yeah, what we did was we took the folks that were on the committee last year, for the most part, I think, and we're presenting that for this year. I think we still need to get a few high school kids yet, but we can work on that.
There are school kids.
Are they on there?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I think we're set then, we just kinda went with that group and added, took any seniors that graduated off.
What about, because the board, when we do our organizational, is that what it's called? Next one. We signed up for committees.
There's two on there.
I don't wanna be.
Well, if that, obviously if you,
Thanks, John.
we could change that if the committees or assignments are different.
Okay. And then the next is the recommendation for the special ed service delivery plan.
Yes, we got a list of folks from, what was that one? Yeah, it's in this one, it's light green, kind of this. So we talked about, we're gonna review our special education service delivery plan. So we've got administrators, we've got AEA folks, we've got representatives from each of our buildings, and also, we've got some representatives from Kemper on this committee as well, because, so we work together in the area of special education for some students, so, this is the committee we have for you for approval.
Any questions? We have parents, special ed teachers, general ed teachers. Okay. Can we put both of them in a motion, the school improvement and the special ed?
Sure.
in a motion?
One less I have to write up.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the school improvement committee and also the special ed services delivery plan.
Second.
Brad?
Yes.
Dwayne?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Next, we have requests for modified allowable growth for limited English proficient.
Yeah, the way this works, we receive money from the state, and then we have a half-time limited English proficient instructor. What happens, though, is at the end of the year, I look at how much money the state gives us, and that's never enough to fund that program. For example, this year, they gave us $19,265. Well, that's fine, but it was $26,278 short. So if you code it correctly, the state will allow you to ask for modified allowable growth to cover that shortfall. And so that's what we are doing this year, and you will see the motion is in the agenda. And I have filed the application, and this is similar to the special ed deficit that you acted on last month, I believe. And so this is to cover the English language learner shortfall. It's right.
I got it.
Yeah, yours isn't in there.
I move to seek approval of modified supplemental amount of $26,278 for excess costs for serving English language learners in a limited English instructional program during the 2018-19 school year.
Second.
Dwayne?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, principals.
You're free to go.
Next, we have the business office report. We have agreement with Iowa School Board Association to conduct a needs assessment.
Every 5 years, districts are supposed to do a needs assessment. We're not quite to the 5 years, but we're close. So, last time IASB helped us with that, and they have like a survey that we send out to staff, to parents, and community, and students. And then they tabulate that and present to us the findings. And it would cost us about $1,900 to conduct that with them. So it's, I've done it before, I've used them before in previous districts as well. The one nice thing here, we would be able to look and see how it compared to last time you did it, and see what differences there are in comparing, so, yeah.
Any questions?
We pay for that out of the general fund expense.
And we're required to do it, right?
You're supposed to do one every 5 years, yeah.
Will we accept the agreement with the Iowa School Board Association to conduct needs assessment for the cost of $1,900?
Second.
John,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
Dwayne?
Yes.
Next, we have financial reports.
Yeah, you don't have a lot of financial reports this month, but if you look at the back in your folder, there's one that has, well, I call it Rob's report, but it has several different colors on there. This is the one that compares our expenditures to date with our published budget. And of course, it's awfully early in the year. You'll notice in the management fund, we've spent 70% of our budget there. Now, obviously, the reason for that is we pay our insurance premiums at the beginning of the year. And as a result, if you look down at the bottom, remember the most important thing on this sheet are the yellow shaded 4 squares. And you'll notice we're at 25% of the year completed. And on support services, we're almost at 40%. But a lot of the insurance premium comes out of support services. So that's why that one looks a little bit skewed. And as the year goes along, that should even out a little bit. And then the other report that I provided, the reason you don't have a lot of reports is I'm just finishing the line item budget. That should be finished in the next couple of weeks. And so then at next month meeting, you'll have a lot more information. The other report I had is on the Carroll Athletic Stadium, just to kind of keep you updated. Obviously, that project is drawing, hopefully, to a close. In the yellow highlighted boxes, that's the changes from the previous month. You see we had a couple of interest payments. Actually, I think there's 2 months there because I didn't give you one last month because there wasn't any expenditures. And then on the next page, you can see we had 2 expenditures that were charged against the stadium this month. One of them was to Scheck's Plumbing and Heating. That involved, the district had an ice machine at the softball field. Really not used much there. And it was decided that they would like to move that to the stadium instead.
I think
And
it's
so,
one, it can go back and forth. It'll go back.
Okay.
It'll go back to the softball field
okay,
during the summer, and it moves over to the football field during.
So is that just for plumbing, so we don't have
Yes,
to keep
that's
on
just
paying
the
that?
plumbing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not an
Yep.
ongoing expense, it's a one-time to set up the water lines and drain for it.
Sure. And then the other one, Seton Products, that was some signage that Jeff ordered. He wanted to put some signs over there where we have that, we were gonna put a turnaround in, we just put curbing on the south side to keep people from parking along there, and then there were some other signs that he ordered as well, but anyway, that's, and you can see we still owe a little bit of money to the contractor, but I haven't seen a request for that, so we'll hang on to it.
Questions? Okay. Next we have, the convention is coming up, busy November. we'll have the delegate assembly and new board, what do they call it, workshop on November 20th, and then the 21st is the annual convention where we'll go up and they have the breakout sessions for the different topics. And we'll just go up that morning, right, Kizzy?
That's, yeah.
And then the employee relations conference for IASB, October 17th. Do you know where is that?
Well, that one, that was last week, so that
Oh,
was,
yeah.
that was
If I knew
probably,
what date it was here.
shouldn't have been on there actually, but, I went to that one, it was on Thursday in Altoona at Prairie Meadows. So it was pretty good.
Suggestions for next month, we have budget updates, the SBRC application for the open enrollment, and policy review, and we'll have the non-policy, the voluntary early retirement on there. And then we're going to go into closed session for the superintendent evaluation.
Before you do that, can I ask a question?
Sure.
It's going back to Selman, I know you already said it, but I didn't have all my equipment set up to grab it. So I guess just kind of briefly, Brad, I heard you say it kind of when you came in, but if you could briefly explain why you guys chose to settle rather than go through the court trial.
Oh, for the first.
Yeah, I'm rehashing stuff you already said, I just didn't have my stuff set up, so.
Can we talk about that?
We've been instructed to not discuss the case until all the paperwork's signed and the case is finalized.
Right, yeah, and I'm not asking about the settlement amount and stuff, I mean, just kind of, you mentioned earlier to avoid increased cost, that kind of stuff. I mean, basically.
That's, well, I think I can help you out. That's really not our decision.
Okay,
So,
so it goes to the insurance.
Insurance
Yes.
company
And
decides.
then you mentioned it, and basically just kind of asking to repeat yourself about why you guys can't disclose how much it was.
And that's at the request of the insurance company as well. I mean, that's what we were instructed to say and tell you, to be
Right.
honest with you.
Makes sense, no, it's.
Until it's signed.
Until it's all
I just need-
finalized
I
and
just need
filed.
voices.
You know,
So,
we can't,
I just need voices, I understand all of this stuff.
we can't sign anything, or we can't say anything until all paperwork's signed, and then
I
it
would
becomes
assume it'd
public
be fairly
record.
quickly,
Right, okay.
because
And
they
then
wanted to
in
know
regard-
our
and this one
decision
is different from
tonight,
what you've
so
talked
then
about.
you could
So,
contact the other parties
From my
involved.
understanding, she tripped,
So I wouldn't think
tripped
it'd
on
take too long.
Got it.
concrete or
Do
whatever.
you
Have you guys taken
remember
any action?
when they changed the entrance
assume
at
Okay, so she
school?
fell on. Is that a?
So that it slopes instead of just a step?
well,
When, do they repave that?
We still got.
I know the-
If I'm putting you in a compromising position to say.
I would just say that we have done work on all of the entrances in this building over the past, probably 5 years.
Okay.
So, yeah, they've all been changed.
Okay.
Sorry for holding you up.
Yeah. Can I get someone to read our closed session?